Imagine this, you are in a brainstorming session with your team discussing a new feature. You propose an idea that you truly believe in, only to have it see rejected. Fast forward 6 months, suddenly that very same idea is back on the table, but now it's presented by someone else and it's gaining traction. Is this sounding too familiar to you? What does this mean? Did your idea lack merit back then? Or were you just ahead of your time? And most importantly, how should you handle situations like this? So today we are going to dive into the long game of product management. What it means to think ahead of others, why your ideas may be rejected and later accepted, and how to shift your mindset from a personal credit to product impact, and why embracing this dynamic will set you up for a long-term success in your product management career. Let's get started. One of the hardest but most important mindset shifts for a product manager is the idea being implemented is more important than the person getting credit for it. So when you think ahead and propose something that later becomes a reality, whether under your name or someone else's name, you should see it as a win. The real outcome isn't about the recognition, it's about delivering value and impact to your product and to your end users. So if you can internalize this, you will build resilience and you can stay focused on what really matters, which is shipping great products. Now let's look at why certain ideas gets rejected at its first instance and later on resurfaces and makes its way into the product. The key reason is that different people process information at different speeds and from different perspectives. Sometimes the idea that makes perfect sense to you may not click for others right away. Other times there could be external factors like the market trend or the leadership direction or technical feasibility could prevent immediate action on the great idea. So, and often many people thinking in the same problem space could come up with similar ideas at different times. Now let me give you an example from my own career where I went through a process of ideation with a number of rejections and then finally some refinement, and then all the way it made it into the product and customer. A few years ago, I embarked on a major product expansion initiative on an existing product, and it seemed straightforward because I had solved similar problems in another product area with a different product team. But what I didn't anticipate was how different the approval process would be from the stakeholders. The first round of discussion already had the requirement, the use cases, and also the solution approach at a very high level because I had a reasonable amount of clarity about the problem space already. But the stakeholder group approving the expansion was not ready to take the solution approach. The feedback was to go back and articulate the requirements and convert them into key concept flows first. So while we worked on that feedback, I could not stop thinking further on the solution, and the next iteration became a blend of the feedback plus the solution expressed as a low fidelity UX wireframe. So this round also did not go well as the stakeholder group was distracted with the wireframe instead of the concepts. So I realized while I was thinking 5 steps ahead, not everyone had caught up to the problem space, and that's when I made a deliberate decision to slow down, focus on specific feedback, and iterate it in a way that resonated with the stakeholder group. So the last round was a pure conceptual flow that neatly mapped the use cases to key functional concepts, exactly limited to the previous feedback and what the stakeholder group was expecting to look into. So this time I started seeing the acceptance. The concepts components were recognized, but still there were some different points of views. Of course, you can expect that. And this time, one of the key concept, we had a debate around, hey, whether it is a runtime concept or a setup concept. At that moment, I realized the focus is on the product outcome and the customer acceptance. So I just let it go. And then I said, hey, let me adjust that feedback right into the solution approach. And then overall, the stakeholder group became confident with the concept being proposed. And then after that, the team was completely, let on its own to execute. So fast forward 1 year, we are done with that product expansion. We have excellent positive feedback from the early adopters and a lot of interest generated. So looking back, the rejections weren't really a bottleneck. So they were actually signals to adjust my approach. And the key lesson I learned was, persistence matters. So I could have easily given up on the idea and just went with the flow based on somebody else's idea, but I persisted, but I was flexible. So with flexibility, the rejections turned into momentum. So my story was about trying to progress at speed while the rest was warming up to the whole space. So the speed impacted how I prepared the content and how I presented them. So once I slowed down, I was able to get the appropriate attention, and the idea was able to be progressed ultimately into the product. Let's talk about the rejection itself, like why it hurts and how to handle it. So rejection is tough. So especially when your idea has merit, you have very strong conviction and you have done the research and homework, but yet the idea is rejected. So here is what it makes it harder. The reasons you really feel personal. You take it personal, and that's where it becomes challenging to overcome rejections. So let's break down this whole rejection to three components: the idea itself, which is the core concept you're proposing, and then the rejection, the fact that your idea wasn't accepted at that time, and the way it was rejected, so how it was communicated to you. So the third part, how rejection is delivered, is what stings the most. Maybe your idea was dismissed outright, maybe you weren't given clear reason, or maybe the leadership did not even acknowledge it. But here is the truth: no matter what, ideas always evolve. There is no perfect idea in the first instance. So just because it is no today doesn't mean it will always be no. So the best thing you can do is to take the rejection with grace, step back and move forward. So in such situations, I just go back, sit quietly, think through the discussions and reframe the discussions from obvious explicit outcome, which is like, hey, I don't think we should pursue this now, to something, an implicit win. Oh, the idea was heard. There was a very specific reason given why it's not good to pursue. Okay, what else I can go back and use this as learnings and do more homework to bring back that idea or strengthen that idea. So rejection isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about factors beyond your control. So here are a few things you should consider when you face a rejection. One, the idea might not be a fit into the broader product vision or business goals. It's just that you were not aware or been informed about the product vision and strategy, and just that you happen to convey that idea that is not aligning to the product vision and strategy. Second is, leadership may have visibility to what's coming ahead, both in terms of technology, in terms of resources, and other business limitations that you aren't aware of, and they may not be able to share all the details with you. And third is the intellectual debate. Sometimes it's the difference in the product philosophy. You might approach solving a problem in a particular way, but whereas the people who are in the place to approve the designs may come from a different philosophy. So these battles can be the toughest ones, but it will also sharpen your thinking. It will make you really think hard about the problem space and really bring in more compelling points of view into the idea. So at the end of the day, there are two ways to win the intellectual battle. Your idea makes it to the product, great. You do the homework, you come back, you keep persisting, and it makes it into the product. Okay, let's say for whatever reasons it is rejected or it's not pursued, it hits a dead end. So what happens? So the product hits the market and the customers start to use it, and then they might ask for it. They might ask for something that you had proposed. So that's a clear validation of the fact that, hey, your thought process and your ideas did make it. It's really valid. It would have added value to the product. It's just that for reasons beyond your control, it didn't make it into the product. So either way, the market decides, and that's how you should change the narrative of rejection. So all rejections are explainable, can be reframed into a rational set of reasons, and the core focus should really be on making sure that there is an intellectual validation. That's more important, and the intellectual validation really builds the confidence in the way you think about product ideas. At this point, you might be thinking, that's great, but what's in it for me? If someone else is getting the credit, why even bother? Now, this is where high agency comes into play. A great product manager is focused on the product and not individual wins. The best product managers build a long-term credibility by consistently driving for impact and not focusing on a personal recognition. Over time, this mindset builds two skills. One, product thinking and validation, which is your ability to think ahead of time, predict what will work in the product, and it should get stronger. And confidence in your idea. Even when ideas are rejected, you learn to refine and you present the ideas better next time. So this isn't just about particular idea getting rejected or a particular idea resurfacing back by another person and then making it into the product and you not getting recognition. It's not about that. It's about strengthening your PM intuition for a long-term future. So the soul of a product manager is a most important factor here. So you should talk to yourself, what's the real reward of being a product manager? The true satisfaction of being a product manager comes from watching users engage with a feature you envisioned, from seeing customer adoption and positive feedback, from knowing that your thinking contributed to something meaningful, even if your name isn't attached to it. That's what makes this job worth it. Another important topic to look at in the context of the ideas ultimately making it a product, whether it's yours or not. End of the day, it's the idea that has made it and validation of how you think. So now let's look at PM career growth from this point of view. So most careers are measured by the promotions and the raises and the public recognition, but in product management there is another dimension altogether. So there is an internal growth track, the development of core product skills that set you up for a long-term success. So ask yourself, are my ideas getting validated, refined, and incorporated into the product? Am I learning to think strategically, even when my ideas don't get accepted immediately? Am I improving at navigating complex decision making? So this internal progression is what separates great PMs from average ones. When I look back at my own PM career journey, I could certainly see there were many cycles of internal growth versus a fewer cycles of external growth in terms of promotions or responsibility changes. And those were perfectly timed. And the reason was that I made every effort to spend time in each IC level or in each management level to build the long-term skills, refining those skills and build credibility, experimenting with ideation and experimenting with the different types of decision making and learning through that process. So that process takes time, and you might feel that it's a period of flat growth. But as long as you're learning, you're refining, you're building credibility, that's perfectly fine. And what would eventually happen is there would come a tipping point. Could be a milestone in your product, that could be a major launch, or there could be a major customer who has implemented your product, is very happy, or that could be a sudden spurt in the adoption of the product, and that could be the point where you get recognized automatically, and then you are having a multiplier effect in terms of the promotion or the responsibility. You might be given a bigger high impact project and so on. So then there is another period of flat external growth, but then there is an opportunity to reboot your internal growth track, and then you hit another tipping point, and then you leap forward. So that's why patience is key. So if you keep focusing on high quality thinking, high impact, external recognition will definitely come. The next time your idea gets rejected, remember, talk to your PM soul. Why are you in this role? For credit or for impact? Think about your internal PM skills progression. Are you building the long-term skills? And when rejection happens, remove yourself from the emotion and let it go. And when your idea makes it to the product, even if someone else presents it, celebrate it. Because in the end, most successful PMs aren't just thinking about today. They are playing the long game, and that's where true impact happens. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, share it with your fellow PMs, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep thinking ahead, keep refining your craft, and most importantly, keep building great products. Please do share your comments and feedback and suggestions for any future topics. Thank you.